The lowly grocery cart is on a roll. Jonathan Vigliotti checks it out.
Shopping carts may help haul the food we'll feast on this Thanksgiving, but when their job is done, they rarely get the respect they deserve. But in some American grocery stores, shopping carts aren't just respected,
It's kind of the highlight of our week.
they're beloved. Places like Price Chopper outside Kansas City, where we met Pat and Mike Foster.
There's been a couple times we've come that it's not been available, and it's disappointing.
Here, a new shopping cart is flying off the rack and down the aisle. A digital screen with GPS guides people around the store. Cameras equipped with AI technology rapidly identify and scan products when they're placed in the basket. Coupons are instant, and you can check out and pay right on the handlebar.
You just lift the flap here.
It's easy to just look and say the shopping cart is what it is.
Casey Broker with Price Chopper began test driving the smart carts a few months ago.
Analog and digital.
Yeah. You look at the Caper cart, and it's really this benefit that helps your customer know exactly where they are, and also is going to help us from a sales perspective as well.
It almost turns a chore into something that's engaging, fun.
Everybody goes to the grocery store. Everybody's grabbing a shopping cart. It's a very familiar behavior.
Take me through what we're looking at here.
A behavior David McIntosh with Instacart wanted to turn into a game.
It taps into retailers' existing loyalty programs.
He showed us how Caper Cart works at Instacart's San Francisco headquarters.
When I put items into the cart, you see these 4 AI-powered cameras pick it up. So you see how that...
So that just scanned it as you put it in the cart.
It scanned it, it turned green, and you can see a coupon popped up that I can clip.
The cart is even outfitted with a scale.
Just toss them right in, and you can see the scale update.
That's cool.
Instacart is betting big, spending a whopping $350 million to acquire the technology in 2021. Shopping has come a long way in the last century.
This is where it all began for the shopping cart.
This is it.
The world's first cart was invented in 1937 by an Oklahoma City grocer named Sylvan Goldman, who put wheels and a handle on a folding chair.
He noticed that people stopped buying produce, buying their material when their basket was full. So he came up with this idea of putting a basket on some sort of cart or trolley.
Steve Velasquez is a curator at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History in Washington, D.C.
So the shopping cart is born in the 1930s. Does it catch on quickly?
It does. He hired actors to pretend shop, to fill the carts, to walk around, and then people started using these carts, and that's when it really took off.
Shopping carts have grown over the decades as markets supersized and refrigerators kept food fresher longer.
Is it really necessary to reinvent the wheel?
Absolutely. When you think about the shopping experience in store, it hasn't really changed that much in the last 80, 90, 100 years. But think about how much it's changed online. What's happened is that online has transformed customer expectations.
The good old shopping cart, once overlooked, once again changing the way we buy our food.
Author and contributor David Sedaris has thoughts about just how we talk to our phones.
I was in a restaurant when the fellow at the next table picked up his phone. "Siri," he commanded, "call Paul Bauer." Oh, right, I thought. That could be done. By other people, I mean. The first thing I do when getting a new phone or iPad is to disconnect Siri. In part because she's so maddeningly obsequious, but mainly because she feels like cheating. A shortcut to what's already a pretty extraordinary shortcut. If I want to know how many vodka tonics it might take to kill someone my older sister's height and weight, the least I can do is type the questions into Google. The way you talk to a person says a lot about you, of course, but so too does the way you talk to a device. I think of all the people I know who will use a GPS, rely on it for everything, then turn on it when they near their destination. Will you shut up already? Then there are those like my friend Patsy. The two of us were driving from Nashville to Knoxville not long ago and decided to stop midway so I could see where she went to college. "Hey Siri," she said in a tone that suggested fun, "can you get me directions to Swanee, Tennessee?" In what seemed to me like no time at all, Siri answered, "I can't find that." "The University of the South," Patsy said, "in Swanee, Tennessee? I can't find that." Patsy lowered her voice and turned to me. "She does this all the time now." I whispered back, "It seems to me like she's not even trying." "Siri," Patsy said, "can you please get me directions to—" She named a town that was close to Swanee, figuring we could make it from there to the college on our own. When Siri came back with the information, Patsy thanked her with what seemed like genuine gratitude. Mixed into it was a hint of pride, the sort you feel when you're patient with a terribly old person or someone who's new on the job and hasn't quite figured out the register. If Siri was a person, you knew that Patsy would give her a big bonus at Christmas, and that Siri would use that money to fly home for the holidays and say, when asked about work by her parents, "My boss, she's pretty cool. I mean, yeah, I really like her."
Fasten your seatbelt. With David Pogue, we're taking off on a voyage to the future.
I'm in a chase plane high over Lake Champlain in Vermont to observe one of the world's first electric airplanes. And I do mean chase plane.
I can't even keep up with him. I'm full power and he's walking away from me.
Our pilot is Chris Caputo.
Come on, man, step on it. I can't do anything else, David. I don't have afterburner. 738 with you.
For years, you've been able to watch cool-looking electric plane videos on YouTube, created by some of the 300 companies who are working on them. But Beta Technologies in Burlington, Vermont is unique.
I believe we're the only company flying with people.
Kyle Clark is Beta's CEO and founder. Its electric plane can carry 6 people and flies 250 miles on one charge.
But every year, batteries get better and better, about 7% per year. That means in 7 years, we'll double that. In another 7 years, we'll double that again.
So you think before you and I die that we will fly on an electric-powered jetliner?
Yes, absolutely.
Traditional airplanes pump out about 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide every year. Electric planes produce no emissions at all, and that's only their first advantage.
One of the things that I think is underappreciated in electric aviation is that, and it's quiet, you can actually hear the wind noise over the fuselage. You feel like a bird.
Electric motors are much simpler than jet engines, too. They contain 1/10 as many parts. Furthermore, electric planes cost far less to fly, since electricity costs only about 1/40 as much as jet fuel. But maybe the most impressive advantage of electric planes is that they can do this.
Wow.
These planes are known in the biz as eVTOLs, a clumsy acronym for Electric Vertical Takeoff and Landing. They don't need a runway to take off, but they can still fly forward the usual way.
The propellers on the front are used in both forms of flight. In the hover portion of the flight, they're tilted up. The 6 propellers in the back are just used in the lifting portion of the flight, so the hover portion of the flight.
Adam Goldstein is the founder and CEO of Archer Aviation, an eVTOL company in San Jose, California, devoted to creating air taxis. You'll board the air taxi from a so-called vertiport downtown, and then fly to the airport, for example, to catch your traditional flight. Goldstein says your eVTOL flight will cost about as much as an Uber or Lyft ride.
And there's lots of traffic that will congest the roads in between the city centers and those airports. Yeah. Manhattan to a JFK is a great example where it's actually not that far on the ground, but takes a really long time using ground transportation.
Well, this sounds great. Planes that are faster, safer, cheaper, more reliable, and better for the environment. So, what's the holdup?
You're talking about a class of airplanes that did not exist.
Aerospace consultant Sergio Cicuta can tell you what the last hurdle is: the Federal Aviation Administration.
The FAA is a very complex task. They make sure that we can walk onto one of the planes and be in no more danger than getting out of bed.
The need for FAA approval explains two strange aspects of Beta's plane. First, it's available with or without its vertical propellers. Clark believes that it will be easier to get initial FAA approval for a traditional plane than one that takes off vertically. As for the second strange thing, Beta's goal isn't creating air taxis.
There are a lot of ways that we can make a meaningful dent on the emissions of aviation before we start to do the thing that everybody talks about, jumping over traffic.
Yeah.
Moving cargo, moving medical, all of those things happen first.
Really? The world's first electric planes will make history by carrying boxes?
Let's point out, cargo room.
Yes.
For consultant Cicuta, that makes perfect sense.
All the way back there.
Exactly.
One of the goals from Amazon is to have the majority of their products to be available the same day in large metropolitan areas. What if I can actually take off and land from one warehouse to the other warehouse and move this cargo? I always think of the Beta airplane as the Amazon truck with wings.
Today, every airline has a desperate pilot shortage. That's one reason that most eVTOLs will eventually be self-flying.
In the 2030s, 2040s, there's going to be a very good chance that you're going to walk into an airplane where there's no pilot.
But in the near term, the FAA will require a pilot.
So with your left hand, just slowly pick up the lift lever.
Oh, I can actually feel vibration.
The aircraft's going to lift off the ground.
Fortunately, flying these planes isn't rocket science, as Beta pilot Chris Caputo showed me in Beta's simulator.
Can we fly over the lake?
Absolutely. So now what we're going to do is we're going to transition onto the wing of the plane.
Oh, okay.
Just push forward with your right hand a little forward pressure. So now we're just flying on the wing of the plane. We're literally just sipping energy.
After 20 simulated minutes flying over simulated Lake Champlain, it was time to simulated land.
Touchdown. Thank you for flying Airpogue.
You're very welcome.
We know that you have a choice when it comes to electric aircraft. Actually, you don't.
Beta and Archer have received millions of dollars worth of orders from various airlines and military branches. Both of them, plus an air taxi company called Joby, have already delivered some planes to the Air Force. All three companies expect to receive FAA approval and begin flying in the US next year. On the day of our visit, Beta Technologies unveiled its new factory, the first electric plane plant outside of China. Among the dignitaries in attendance, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders.
So it is an extraordinary day, not just for Vermont or for the country, but I think for aviation and in taking on climate change as well.
Why Vermont? It seems like all the engineers and the programmers are in Silicon Valley.
In Vermont, there's a heavy awareness of climate change. And having a group of people working on this that not only are really good at what they do, but they care about the mission, gives them a little extra oomph at 2 in the morning when we're trying to get ready for a flight test the next morning.
We are cleared to land.
Among those passionate Vermont employees, former Delta pilot Chris Caputo.
I've flown this aircraft in a while, so don't judge my landing too much, guys.
Did you take a pay cut to come here?
I did. A pretty healthy pay cut. But it's more about the mission that this company is on to decarbonize aviation and do something good for our planet, our country, and the world, and your kids, my kids, and the next generation.
We've all heard about the promise and perils of artificial intelligence, but lest you have any doubts about its potential, consider this report from our Lee Cowan.
You may think that I'm talking foolish.
Even if you're not into country, you can't help but bathe in the baritone that is Randy Travis.
Oh, darling, I'm gonna love you forever. Forever and ever, amen.
His voice goes down like whiskey, always has.
But on the other hand,
ever since his first album in 1986 with record producer Kyle Lenny.
I thought if we sold 40,000 copies, they might let us make a second record.
And what did that first?
About 4 million. So I'm a genius.
There are 3 wooden crosses on the right side of the highway.
Randy Travis and that voice helped build Warner Music Nashville into what it is today. Chris Lacey is the label's co-chair and co-president.
What was it about his voice that was so unique?
How do you describe a thing that just hits you in the center of your chest, and unconsciously makes you feel full and familiar and known? How do you describe something like that,
Last night I dug your picture out from my old dresser drawer.
His was a God-given talent, and then fate took it all away.
Another serious medical blow to country music star Randy Travis. He suffered a stroke last night at a hospital in Texas.
It felt like it could be the end of an era.
I thought we were going to lose him.
Okay.
He was given just a 2% chance of survival. Besides the paralysis, the area of his brain that controls speech and language was hit the hardest.
Music is what he's made of. Music is his heart, it's his soul.
His wife, Mary, does most of the talking these days.
He knows what he wants to say, but
Just doesn't come out.
Mm-mm.
You've made peace with it?
Yeah. Yep.
And how do you do that?
Oh, no.
3 years after the stroke, with Mary at his side, Randy Travis was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame and gave Amazing Grace new meaning.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
There wasn't a dry eye in the house.
I told you so.
In his absence, though, he's heard a lot of AI-generated fakes of his voice. A simple Google search brings up sites like these, promising to convert anyone's vocal into a Randy Travis sound-alike.
It doesn't sound good, and it doesn't sound real, because it's not.
And that got his record label thinking.
We started with this concept of what would AI for good look like for us? And the first thing that came to mind was we would give Randy Travis his voice back.
There were, however, more than a few skeptics.
It sounded like, like a parlor trick or something.
But Kyle Lenning, with Randy's blessing, decided to try. He and Warner Music started by pulling 42 Randy Travis tracks from the vault.
Operator, please connect me.
Like this one, the original recording of his hit 1982. And then they stripped away the music, leaving only the vocal.
For what I didn't do, wow, I sure do need to tell her.
That was half the recipe. The other half needed to be provided by a donated or surrogate voice.
So I have to get a level on you.
In this case, that voice came from country music singer James Dupre.
Being a part of new Randy Travis music, I mean, that's like, what?
She had eyes like diamonds when they caught the light.
That's what was put into the model.
The model. It's the secret sauce.
Here's the vocal. Load it in.
An AI program that takes Randy Travis's voice and overlays it on top of James Dupre's singing. It's hardly an exact science.
It's not about how it sounds, it's about how it feels.
And that's not something a computer can figure out.
Not yet.
Kyle knows Randy's voice almost better than Randy does. They worked together for 40 years. This time, though, the task was to take a computer-generated voice and give it Randy's country heart.
Him being here and him being able to be, a vital part of the decision-making process makes all the difference to me.
In the end, they finally landed on something they felt worthy of a voice no one but those who knew him best could replicate.
It's Randy Travis. Randy's on the other side of the microphone. It's still his vocal. There's no reason he shouldn't be able to make music. And to deprive him of that, if he still wants to do that, that's unconscionable to me.
2 months ago, Warner Music gathered a small circle of fellow musicians into a recording studio. Randy sat with a Cheshire Cat's grin. And then they hit play.
She had eyes like diamonds.
Holy crap.
The reaction to his first song in more than a decade was a mix of joy and wonder.
Oh, but they were dark and deeper than the night.
For his wife, tears.
You forget how much you missed it until you hear it again.
For Randy's country friends, like Grammy-winning superstar Carrie Underwood, there was confusion.
How?
For Cole Swindell, who just won 3 ACM awards,
I must have said to myself, it's a great big world.
it reminded him of why he became a country singer in the first place.
For y'all let me hear it, that means a lot. Damn, I'm glad to hear you sing. Oh.
And veteran country star Clay Walker.
And there ain't no more where that
he was simply over the moon. Even Randy's own family hadn't heard it until 2 weeks ago.
It's so weird to kind of explain like everything that goes through your head when you're listening to it.
It was perfection, with a caveat.
We don't exactly know how to get here again.
You want to laugh at me as I try to sing this chorus?
She set her diamond ring next to another round of bourbon.
The second song they're working on is proving a harder nut to crack.
Sometimes angels spill whiskey on their wings.
Wow. That is so crazy.
You hear how all the vibrato doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
There's still work to be done, clearly, and a lot of questions to answer about what this all means going forward. But revel in this. After a decade-long absence, Randy Travis is back on the radio. His post-stroke debut song, Where That Came From, was released this past week. For Randy Travis, it's not just a single. It's a victory.
It's a life inspiration. Speak kindly, love fully, live completely, and leave the rest to God, you know?
Sounds like there's a song in there somewhere.
We can only hope.
There just ain't no more where that came from.
Sir Isaac Newton wrote, "Truth is ever to be found in simplicity." Well, if Sir Isaac were around today and tried to use a laptop or drive a car or even turn on the stove, let's just say simple, they are not. David Pogue searches for simplicity in a complicated world.
Everywhere you look, things are getting more complicated. Our phones have over 1,000 settings. Shower heads come with apps. Cars have touch screens. Ovens have touch screens.
There's no doubt that featureitis is real. And again, most of these things are too complicated.
Design consultant Jacob Nielsen says that part of the problem is bad design.
Simplicity is actually difficult to achieve. It takes a good amount of time and talent, I should say, as well.
And part of the problem is us. As consumers, we tend to buy the gizmos with the most features.
If I give you the choice between this toothbrush can do 2 things and this one can do 5 things, you may think the 5-feature toothbrush is a better toothbrush.
I think we've identified the nub of the entire problem because manufacturers know that we will always pick the one with more features. So that's their incentive to keep piling them on.
Yeah, they have the incentive to do more of that.
But if you think today's products are hard to learn, try designing them. Do you happen to know in total how many commands there are in Microsoft Word?
I can tell you, having redesigned all of the icons for all of commanding in all of Office, that the collection of all of Office is thousands and thousands, tens of thousands.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man! John Friedman is Microsoft's chief of design. And yet, what would happen if you, in a new version, were attempt to take away something that didn't get much use?
Some set of people would feel like we removed something very important for them. This is the conundrum we have to deal with. How do we take the power of what can be added to products as technology gets better and make it really simple for people.
Over the years, Microsoft has tried many times to strike that balance. When people complained that Microsoft Word was too complex, Microsoft offered a simpler, streamlined word processor called Write. It bombed.
It was one size fits all, and that's really hard. Simplicity can only come when it's truly adapted to each individual's definition of what is simple for them.
Then there was Clippy, the cartoon paperclip.
Clippy would proactively come forward in something like Word and say, it looks like you're trying to write a resume, and help you with the tools that you would need to do something like write a resume.
Clippy flopped too.
I think it was before its time.
Achieving simplicity is even harder when you're designing cars, because your customers are supposed to keep their eyes on the road.
Everything is getting more complex. And now you can imagine what it means in a vehicle environment where you have to drive. In addition, you get all kinds of information.
Frank Weber is the head of vehicle development for BMW in Munich, another company that has experimented with designs for simplicity.
The BMW iDrive system.
In the early 2000s, it introduced a turning, tilting, clicking knob for navigating menus called iDrive. It was not a hit.
Perhaps you own a BMW and it's making you feel a bit like...
And we were heavily criticized. So it was not that everybody loved it from the beginning, because their experience was different that they had with their other vehicles. You have to be very careful not to overwhelm people when you go from one generation to another generation.
But now, are you ready for some good news? These companies say that thanks to new breakthrough technologies, they're on the verge of curing featureitis once and for all.
Drive me to Berlin.
In BMW's 2025 cars, it will be voice control. What are some of the things that you will be able to do by voice that used to require going through menus?
Many of the things. Whether you ask for service, whether you want to change the interior color of your vehicle. I think if you want to go to a sport mode, typical things where you have to go deep into your menu structure. People will never do this again.
The new cars can also show key information beneath the entire windshield, so you don't have to look down. And unlike some car companies, BMW promises not to eliminate physical knobs for radio and climate. So it sounds like you're saying the answer is not voice. The answer is not touchscreens. The answer is not physical buttons. It sounds like your approach is to divide up the driving tasks to each control that's best suited to it.
Yeah, optimizing that setup is, I think, the art of controlling a vehicle.
Meanwhile, Microsoft says that it too is about to crack the complexity conundrum.
We're at the dawn of the next wave of computing, probably the most impactful thing you and I'll ever get to see in our lifetimes.
According to Chief Marketing Officer Yusuf Mehdi, the solution is artificial intelligence.
A lot of that complexity of files and menus and buttons, all that's going to go away because AI is going to enable us to just ask for what we want.
This feature, called Copilot, is a new app for smartphones and computers.
So for example, I can say, hey, turn my PC to dark mode. This is just like that, I'm in dark mode.
So I could put this into focus mode, do not disturb, without knowing where it is in the settings.
100%, just plain English.
Could I say, pull up that email to my mom?
Yes, you can absolutely do that. You'll be able to say, show me all the emails from my mom last week.
Of course, not everyone will be happy. And people don't like change, do they?
No, people do not like change. That's for sure.
So, will voice control and AI help with the complexity problem? We'll soon find out. In the meantime, if you feel intimidated by complexity, design consultant Jacob Nielsen has 2 pieces of parting advice. First, no need to feel like a techno loser.
It's not your fault. It's the designer's fault for making it complicated, because it doesn't have to be complicated.
And second,
don't be seduced by this promise of a toothbrush that can do 20 things when you only needed to do one thing. Go for simplicity, buy simplicity, and then your life will be happy.
David Martin shows us how technology is keeping the experiences of the greatest generation alive for generations to come.
We were innocent kids who weren't ready for what was coming, let me tell you.
Vincent Speranza, the son of Italian immigrants, enlisted when he turned 18.
I decided to become a paratrooper when I found out that that would probably be the fastest way to get into the battle.
And fought in the Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's last gasp attempt to stave off defeat in the final months of the war in Europe.
12,000 Americans in that town held off 56,000 German troops.
Vincent Speranza died last year, but visitors to the National World War II Museum in New Orleans can still talk to him.
Did you have any close calls?
I was trying to take a drink from my canteen, and it slipped out of my hands. And when I bent over to pick up the canteen, it went right through my helmet. Had I been standing, it would have went right through the middle of my chest.
It uses voice recognition software and artificial intelligence to access questions from interviews that we've had with all of the veterans, where we've asked them roughly 1,000 questions.
Museum Vice President Peter Crane is in a race against time to preserve not just the stories, but the people who lived them.
Unfortunately, we're coming to a time where there are fewer and fewer World War II veterans to be able to actually talk to.
18 veterans of the war effort each sat for 2 days of interviews in a specially configured Hollywood studio. Bomber pilot John Luckadoo was one.
It was a intriguing concept, extremely so.
What intrigued you?
The thought that my great-great-great-grandchildren could speak to me and ask me anything that came to their minds, and that would automatically scroll to my answer.
Not just your great-great-grandchildren, everybody's great-great-grandchildren.
Yes, anyone will be able to.
Anyone will be able to ask Woody Williams about seeing the flag raised on Iwo Jima.
Old Glory was flying, had just reached its peak when they raised it on top of Mount Suribachi. And I didn't see it go up, but I saw it the minute it got up.
Until his passing, Williams was the war's last living recipient of the Medal of Honor.
I received the Medal of Honor for eliminating the enemy within 7 pillboxes on Iwo Jima.
The war wasn't won just on the battlefield.
I was a good machinist, I think, because I loved math.
Grace Brown was a Rosie the Riveter who made parts for bombers.
The war was fought and won by the average guy who was down the street, or the woman who was a nurse or working in the factory.
John Luckadoo was 20 years old when he flew bombing missions over Germany.
They were about as dangerous as you can imagine, because we were going up against a very formidable German Air Force that had been fighting for 4 years.
How many missions did you fly?
If you survived 25, you were eligible to return to the United States.
What were the odds of surviving 25 missions?
Less than 1 in 4. We didn't know what we were doing.
Now 102 years old, Luckadoo got his first look at how he'll be remembered.
What was your worst mission? As we turned on the bomb run, we had an 18-ship formation. We lost 12 out of the 18 ships instantly.
So what do you think of your answers?
Kind of eerie to speak to yourself.
So that's the self.
All right.
That generations are going to know.
All right.
You good with that?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how the generations react to it.
Yeah.
it's not very important as to how I react to it.
React not just to his war stories, but to what happened when he came home.
They rationed us to a fifth of whiskey a day. I soon realized that that wasn't enough. I was rapidly becoming an alcoholic.
Young generations are going to find out that too about you.
Well, I did want to convey the fact that this is the kind of state that you could be left in if you were experiencing what we experienced in those days. That war does that, can do that to you.
I'm sorry. It's overwhelming.
Corbett Summers, whose father served in World War II, was one of the first members of the public to see the new exhibit.
Everyone should have that opportunity to see that generation. I could stand there all day and talk to each and every one of them and listen to their stories and what they went through.
Fear in war is something that's always there.
You can read all the great histories of the war and never find a better answer to why soldiers fight than from the late Vincent Speranza.
In your mind, swirling around, the most important thought you had was, am I going to be able to stand up and my friends afterwards say to me, yes, you're a combat soldier.
More than 600,000 visitors a year.
I was assigned to the 99th Fighter Squadron, part of the 332nd Fighting Group in Italy.
Can hear firsthand from veterans like Tuskegee Airman George Hardy about a time when it was all on the line.
Lives had been expended to protect our freedom and our values and what we considered our ideals and democracy.
Do you think people today have a good understanding of World War II?
Certainly not. The biggest thing they don't understand is how the civilian population, those who were not in uniform, and particularly women, rallied behind the war effort. We were unified like we have never been before, and sadly probably never will again.
You say you couldn't make it to Paris to take in the latest Van Gogh show? Not to worry. Seth Doane can tell us all about it.
With bold colors and dramatic brushstrokes, Vincent van Gogh, that tortured genius, has traditionally expressed himself through his art. But now there's also his avatar.
Van Gogh, what is your greatest inspiration?
My greatest inspiration, without a doubt, is nature.
He's a tad monotone, but is equipped with a wealth of knowledge.
It is in nature that I find comfort.
Artificial intelligence combs select biographies and the artist's own writings, 900 letters, covering art, relationships, and his struggles with mental health.
As you can see, the interface is quite simple. It's a digital screen and a microphone, but behind this there is months of research in artificial intelligence.
Agnès Abastado oversees digital development for the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, as this storied museum in an old train station finds new ways to engage visitors. Its recent Van Gogh exhibition included a virtual reality experience based on the artist's palette and that avatar, Bonjour Vincent, which allows visitors to pose questions to the artist more than a century after his death.
How were the last few months of your life?
The last months of my existence were a blend of both hope and despair, a tumultuous combination that consumed me wholly. In the end, it was a time of great turmoil, which eventually led to my premature demise.
It's remarkably personal.
Yeah, it is personal because this technology really wants to recreate the personality of someone.
Van Gogh was a troubled artist who killed himself at age 37, just 10 years into his painting career. But he was prolific at the end. In his last 70 days of life, he was producing more than a painting a day and dozens of drawings, many of which were gathered at the museum.
You've read those 900 letters of Van Gogh's. I asked the Van Gogh avatar what his greatest inspiration was. He said nature. Was the avatar right?
Yes, totally.
Emmanuel Kokari is the exhibition curator. He notes this period of Van Gogh's life is marked by experimentation, clouds painted in reverse, blue brushstrokes over a white background.
It's very lively because you still see the gesture of the painter, and you see the flower here, very thick.
When you're this close to the painting, you can
yes,
actually see the paint.
Exactly. We always say it's a painter of color, but above all, a painter of thickness.
The Dutch artist had moved to the countryside near Paris in May 1890 after famously cutting off his ear and spending time in an asylum. He'd come to see Dr. Paul Gachet, whom he painted.
Dr. Gachet told him to forget about all your trouble, problems, just work, paint. So all day long he painted.
He followed doctor's orders, painting the roots of an acacia tree at the very end.
He finished it on the day he died. And of course, the symbolism is really heavy. He wanted to marry, to find a house, and to root himself in family life with children. He didn't succeed. And he says in his last letter that was found in his pocket, only our painting can speak.
But now those letters are speaking through a higher tech form of expression.
But even though Dr. Gachet gave me his word, I could not bring myself to believe that my troubled mind could ever be healed.
Some visitors could say this is a gimmick or almost a distraction from Van Gogh's art.
It's another way to enter what we know and all the knowledge about Van Gogh. And what I think interesting about this interface is that it's not us, museum, who choose a theme. It's the visitor who really has what he wants to know about Van Gogh.
We asked AI Van Gogh about the initial public reception to his work.
It brings me great grief that so many of my creations remain unacknowledged and unsold.
So he recognized that his art wasn't that well received.
Artificial intelligence only hints at the poetry of Van Gogh's writing. He was prolific in life and, as it turns out, prophetic before death.
Though I cannot claim to foresee what is to come, I hold firmly to my conviction that true art possesses the ability to transcend time and stir the hearts of generations to come. To me, the worth of my art lies in its power to reverberate with others and to reveal a glimpse into the splendor and intricacy of life itself.
You dial the number, navigate the recorded instructions, and if you're lucky, there's a person, a real person on the other end of the line. If you're lucky. But more often than not, you don't get the action you'd hoped for. So, is your call important to them, really? David Pogue looks at customer service, its frustrations, and its future.
A call may be recorded or monitored.
Want to know how I spent my Tuesday? Trying to report some fraudulent credit card charges.
Thank you for calling Global Commercial Card.
Hi. Yes, I'm trying to report some fake charges on my credit card.
I'll connect you with our fraud team.
I see.
Thanks so much for your business.
Okay. Customer service is a real problem in this country. Just ask literally anyone.
So I've got a tale for your customer service story.
That said, we're sorry. We don't have anybody right now to answer your call. Please call back another time.
AT&T had me on the phone for 6 hours.
The airline gave me the runaround via email. It kept saying it couldn't find our flight.
I said, lady, the technician is standing 2 feet in front of me, and he has the unit in his hand.
So why is customer service so bad? First of all, labor shortage. Especially since the pandemic, it's hard to find people who want the call center jobs. The average call center worker quits after about 18 months. Second, consolidation. All those corporate mergers of airlines and banks and telecom companies and cable companies. Now there's not as much competition, so there's less incentive to fix the problems. So what happens? You get a lot of unhappy customers, or worse.
Needless to say, I did not stay with Verizon Wireless.
So I filed a complaint with the Public Service Commission.
Now I'm the proud owner of a new website where I plan to detail the rotten customer service.
And so to this day, I have upstairs in my guest room a 4K DirecTV box that drops out every 4 minutes, and it's hooked up to a TV that isn't 4K.
This isn't about money. It's about human decency.
Well, if it's any consolation, there is a group of people who may be even more frustrated by the customer service situation than you are. And that is the customer service agents.
They call in, they see you as part of the organization that's imposing the issue rather than a human being.
Believe it or not, I've had somebody curse me out completely. They can't see you, they're just over the phone. So they take advantage of that, of course.
They call with their frustrations. They don't understand the procedures. They have been told no multiple times.
And sometimes that brushes off on me. I'm frustrated too. I want to help you out. I stand up. I feel like I'm going to get in a state where I'm sweating.
Would you ever say to a caller, I need to put you on hold for a second, when you really don't, but you just need a break?
Of course. Of course.
Dominique Raymond, Kayla Zuniga, Generis Ortiz, and Calvin Echevarria.
HIPAA purposes, if you could just please provide me with your date of birth.
Work in customer support for health companies and patient advocacy nonprofits in Orlando.
Well, right now, I don't even see that you're registered, so there's nothing to resubmit.
I've read that turnover in call center work is more than double the average of other jobs.
I think it's hard. They're not necessarily looking for a resolution, they're looking to vent.
Yep.
So, yeah, that can be kind of difficult and taxing.
Okay, give me just a second. Let me.
Customer service is not easy. It's not meant for everyone.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
So, if the job can be so hard, why do they do it?
There's also a lot of redeeming qualities. It's very mentally stimulating because every day is a new challenge or new experience.
The beauty of it is, honestly, to me, is to help out there. It brings me joy. Sometimes I cry with the patient. I'm so excited to actually help someone out.
No cable company customer call center employee has ever cried with me.
Thank you for holding.
And so for years, that's how things have stood. Two frustrated armies of people on opposite ends of the line, each frustrated by a dysfunctional, underfunded system. And then, this happened.
My name is Grace. I'm a virtual front desk agent. What can I help you with today?
I left a bag at the gate.
Can you describe the item?
It's a 9-foot Steinway grand piano.
I have good news for you. We were able to locate an item matching that description.
Welcome to the new age of artificial customer service. Artificial intelligence, that is.
You can adjust these personality sliders. How much empathy should the bot show? How much should it respond to your emotion?
Nico Benitez is a co-founder of GridSpace, creators of an AI phone rep called Grace.
My name is Grace.
At this moment, more than 100 hospital chains, airlines, phone companies, and banks use Grace to take customer calls.
It doesn't sound like you're talking to a robot. You hear the ums and uhs and all the imperfections that indicate that someone is listening.
Anthony Scuderi is another GridSpace co-founder.
And so if you have a system that feels like it's listening to you and doesn't make you restate yourself, it's much less frustrating as a user interface.
How does Grace make life easier for the humans at the call center?
Well, that's a really hard job. And it's just people yelling at you all day. And so one way Grace can help is by being kind of a bit of a blast shield. By, first someone calls in, they state their intent, they complain, the bot tries their best to help them, and then the person can kind of come in as the hero. I mean, that's in general how automation really helps people, which is it enables people to do the stuff that people are best at. But then for the other 90% of calls where people are calling in with password reset, or whatever, Grace can just deal with that.
GridSpace set up a fake Airline 800 number so I could witness firsthand how Grace hands you off to a human when the problem requires creativity.
Thanks for calling CBS Airlines.
I have a service animal. Can I bring my service animal?
Yes, you are allowed to bring your service animal on board.
Okay, it is a tiger. Is that okay?
I'm sorry, but don't have any information about bringing a tiger as a service animal, I'd be happy to transfer you to an agent.
So common sense is not her strong suit.
If there's no policy about tigers, she's not going to invent one. Unrestrained AI acting as a representative of your company can get you in a lot of trouble. And so we would rather err on the side of being real by the book, real literal.
Meanwhile, Grace offers another benefit to us puny humans, much less sitting on hold. She's answering millions of phone calls simultaneously.
Yeah, picks up right away, even if it's a machine.
A fascinating concept, but not everyone is sure that AI is the answer.
It seems like you lose that connection, that ability to make that good first impression and to connect with the patient right off the bat. So it seems impersonal.
I love the fact that we can actually they're live agents. You can't do that with an AI.
Take that, Grace. Plenty of companies are working on AI customer support systems like Grace. But until they become widespread and reliable, most of the people answering your calls will still be people.
We get them at their worst, but then also at times when you can pivot and recover that situation, then get them at their best and their most grateful.
They'll write your name down and say, hey, like, I want to let your supervisor know that you helped me. And even though I started yelling at you from the beginning, it was not your fault. You assisted me and you never hung up on me.
So you forgive them their anger?
Yeah. So no need to forgive. There's no forgiving. I don't take that personal. No. You just needed somebody to listen to.
You as well. Happy holidays. Bye-bye.